we're going to divide polynomials using long division. So in this first problem, we're going to set it up using long division. What comes first? X squared plus 7x plus 10 goes underneath the division bar. And what we're dividing by, x plus 2, goes on the outside. You can see that we're dividing by two terms. So when we start figuring out what numbers or terms, numbers and variables, we're going to put on the top, we have to start by looking at the first two terms underneath that division bar. So we're going to say, I want to know how many times x plus 2 can go into x squared plus 7. So the first thing I want to think about is, well, when I figure out what it is and I remultiply, I'm going to subtract the number off. And I want to make this first term equal 0. So I have to ask myself, what can I multiply x squared by to, well, get x squared? Because x squared minus x squared is 0. Because my ultimate goal is to make that equal 0 so I can bring down my next term and keep going. So, but I do have two terms. Since there's two terms out here, I'm going to have to look at the first two terms here. To make this be x squared, you would multiply x times x. Because there's two terms, I have to go back two terms and I have to put an x up here. I'm going to multiply this by what I'm dividing by. So I have x times x is x squared. X times 2 is positive 2x. See why I went back 2? Because when I multiply this variable here, x, I have to multiply it by both terms outside here. So when I subtract, x squared minus x squared gave me 0. That's why I wanted to make what I multiplied by, make it be x squared underneath, so it would equal 0. Now I have 7x minus 2x is 5x. I have to bring down my next term. It's a plus 10. Just like when you're doing long division, you bring down your next number. In this case, it's the next term with the operation. Since it was plus 10, we brought down that operation too. All right, so now I want to get rid of 5x. So I always look at what's in front because the 5x is in front and x is in front here. To make 5x be 0, well, I have to subtract off 5x. So what do I multiply x by to make it be 5x? Well, positive 5. So I have to put a plus 5 on top. You're always going to have plus or minus in between each term as you go to the next one. Because I'm going to multiply by positive 5, it has to be plus 5. So 5 times x is 5x. 5 times positive 2, or plus 2, gives me plus 10. And when I subtract this, 5x minus 5x is 0. Plus 10 minus 10 is 0. So I'm left with 0. I don't have any remainder. I know that I'm finished. So that means that my answer is x plus 5. All right, let's try another one of those. Okay, same thing. You're going to set up your long division. We have y cubed plus y squared minus 13y minus 21. It's divided by y plus 3. Remember that goes on the outside. All right, so I'm going to multiply. I'm going to look at the first two terms. So whatever I multiply by has to go right above that second term, because if I multiply by one thing, by one term, when I multiply it by what's down here, I will get my two terms, because it's like distributing, multiplying it by each term out here. Well, I want to get rid of y cubed. Since I have to subtract off whatever I multiply by, I would get 0. So I want this to be y cubed. So I have to ask myself, what times y gives me y cubed? Well, y squared. So that's what I'm going to put right above that second term. Y squared times y is y cubed. Y squared times the plus 3 gives me plus 3y squared. So we're subtracting y cubed minus y cubed is 0. Y squared, remember this is the same thing as 1y squared, minus 3y squared gives me negative 2y squared. All right, bring down the next term. It's minus 13y. Okay, so I want to get rid of negative 2y squared. So, well, what do I multiply y by to make it be? I want it to be the same thing because when I subtract, if I subtract off the same thing, it'll equal 0. So what do I multiply y by to get negative 2y squared? Well, I could multiply by negative 2y, and then it'll be the exact same thing. Remember, you're putting an operation in between, so that negative, well, is my minus. Negative 2y times y is negative 2y squared. Negative 2y times positive 3 is negative 6y. Okay, and remember my operation is I'm going to subtract everything that's on bottom. So negative 2y squared minus 2y squared. Well, minus a negative is plus a positive. So negative 2y squared plus 2y squared is 0. So that did cancel out. If you want to put a 0, you can. Negative 13y minus negative 6y. Again, minus and negative changes to plus the positive, so I actually have negative 13y plus 6y gives me negative 7y. Okay, I'm going to bring down that minus 21. Right? So what I put above this one is, well, what do I multiply y by to get negative 7y? Well, negative 7. Okay, so negative 7 times y is negative 7y. Negative 7 times positive 3 is negative 21. So when I subtract, remember my operation is subtraction, minus a negative plus a positive. So negative 7y plus 7y is 0. Again, minus a negative plus a positive, so negative 21 plus 21 is 0. So I have nothing remaining. That means my answer is y squared minus 2y minus 7. Okay. So those ones were fairly easy because we didn't have a remainder. We were left with 0 at the end. So now we're going to try a couple of problems where we do have a remainder. It's not too much more difficult. All right, so this first one, we're going to set it up the same way. We have x cubed plus 5x squared plus 7x plus 8, and it's divided by x plus 2. All right, what do I multiply x by? You always look at the front. What do I multiply x by to get x cubed? Well, I multiply by x squared. But because we have two terms out here, I have to go back two terms, and I'm going to put it right above that second term, so x squared. Because x squared times x squared is x cubed, x squared times positive 2 is positive 2x squared, and I'm subtracting. X squared minus x squared is 0. 5x squared minus 2x squared is 3x squared. Bring down our next term, which is plus 7x. All right, what I put next is, what do I multiply x by to make it be 3x squared? Well, it's a positive 3x squared, so I multiply it by positive 3x. Because 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times positive 2 is positive 6x. I'm subtracting. 3x squared minus 3x squared is 0. That cancels out. 7x minus 6x is x, or just 1x. Bring down that last term of plus 8. All right, so here, well, what do I multiply x by to get x? Well, it's already x, but I have to put something there. So I multiply by positive 1. That'll give me x back. So multiply by positive 1. 1 times x is 1x or x. Remember, I don't have to put that 1 there if I don't want to, but I can. 1 times 2 is positive 2. So when I subtract, x minus x is 0. 8 minus 2 is 6. So I don't have anything left to bring down. I do have a remainder here. Okay, what you do with the remainder isn't too difficult. You're going to bring down the part of your answer that you have. We know that we have x squared plus 3x plus 7, or sorry, plus 1. Make that into a 1. All right, we're going to add on our remainder over what we divided by. So remember, this original problem was divided by x plus 2. So we're going to do 6, which is our remainder, over x plus 2. And this is our answer. Okay, so the first part's the same. You just have to remember to add on your remainder divided by, well, what you divided your original problem by. All right, let's do one more, and then I'll let you try a couple on your own. All right, set up our problem. Y cubed plus y squared minus 10y plus 10 divided by y minus 2. All right, what do we multiply y by to get y cubed? Well, y squared. So that has to go over, I have to go 2 terms back because there's 2 terms out here. Y squared times y is y cubed. Y squared times negative 2 is negative 2y squared. Subtract. Y cubed minus y cubed is 0. Y squared minus a negative 2y squared, so that changes to plus a positive. So it gives me 3y squared minus 10y. All right, what do you multiply y by to get 3y squared? Well, positive 3y. 3y times y is 3y squared. 3y times negative 2 is negative 6y. We're going to subtract. 3y squared minus 3y squared is 0. Minus a negative is plus a positive. So negative 10y plus 6y is negative 4y. Bring down that plus 10. To, what do we multiply y by to get negative 4y? Well, negative 4. So negative 4 times y is negative 4y. Negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Going to subtract. Minus a negative is plus a positive. I like to put that in parentheses just so I don't get confused when I already have my subtraction there. Or sorry, my negative there. So negative 4y plus 4y is 0. 10 minus 8 is 2. So again, I have the remainder. I don't have anything else to bring down, so I'm going to write my answer. Y squared plus 3y minus 4 plus my remainder of 2 divided by, well, what I divided the problem by, y minus 2. All right. So here are some problems for you to go ahead and try. Try them out. Come back when you're ready for the answers and I'll go through them with you. All right. So let's go through these answers. We have x minus 1 on the outside, x cubed plus x squared plus 2x minus 4. All right, I'm going to multiply x by x squared to get x cubed. X squared times x is x cubed. Minus x squared times 1 is x squared, or negative x squared. Subtracting this off, we get minus the negatives plus positive, so we get 2x squared. Bring down the plus 2x. We multiply x times positive 2x. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. We're subtracting. 2x squared minus 2x squared is 0. 2x squared minus a negative plus changes to plus a positive. So 2x plus 2x is 4x. Bring down your minus 4. We multiply x times 4, so plus 4 to get 4x. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times the minus 1 is minus 4. We subtract. 4x minus 4x is 0. Minus a negative is plus a positive, so negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Meaning our answer is x squared plus 2x plus 4. All right. Here we have y plus 5 on the outside. Underneath is y cubed plus 7y squared plus 9y minus 5. All right, to get y cubed, we're going to multiply y by y squared. Y squared times y is y cubed. Y squared times 5 is plus 5y squared. We're going to subtract. We get 0. And 7y squared minus 5y squared is 2y squared. Bring down the plus 9y. To get 2y squared, we would multiply y by positive 2y. 2y times y is 2y squared. 2y times 5 is plus 10y. And we're going to subtract. We get 0. 9y minus 10y is negative 1y. Bring down the minus 5. To make y be negative 1y, we're going to multiply it by negative 1. So we put a minus 1. Negative 1 times y is negative 1y. Negative 1 times positive 5 is negative 5. When we subtract, we get 0. Because minus a negative is plus a positive. So negative 1y plus 1y is 0. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0. So our answer is y squared plus 2y minus 1. All right, now the ones where we are going to have remainders. So we have x plus 2 on the outside, x to the 4th. Oh, this one's tricky. We don't have an x cubed term, so we have to put plus 0x cubed. So if you didn't do that, make sure you go back and do it now. Plus 2x squared plus 3x plus 5. You can't skip a term. So if it skips from an exponent of 4 to an exponent of 2, you have to put, well, we do have 0 x cubed terms, and you have to include that. All right, we multiply x times x cubed in order to get x to the 4th. So x cubed goes right above 0x cubed. X cubed times x is x to the 4th. X cubed times 2 is plus 2x cubed. When we subtract, we get 0. 0x cubed minus 2x cubed is negative 2x cubed. Bring down plus 2x squared. All right, to get negative 2x cubed, we multiply x by negative 2x squared. Negative 2x squared times x is negative 2x cubed. Negative 2x squared times 2 is negative 4x squared. We're going to subtract. Again, minus a negative is plus a positive, so this is 0. 2x squared plus 4x squared is 6x squared because minus a negative is plus a positive. Bring down the plus 3x. All right, to make x into 6x squared, we're going to multiply it by a positive 6x. 6x times x is 6x squared. 6x times 2 is positive 6x. Sorry, positive 12x, because we're doing 6 times 2. We subtract. 6x squared minus 6x squared is 0. 3x minus 12x is negative 9x. Bring down your plus 5. All right, to get negative 9x, we multiply x by negative 9. Negative 9 times x is negative 9x. Negative 9 times 2 is minus 18. When we subtract, negative 9x minus 9x is 0. 5 minus negative 18 plus a positive, so 5 plus 18 gives us 23. So our answer, we have x cubed minus 2x squared plus 6x minus 9 Here's a remainder of 23, so plus 23 over, we divided by, up here, x plus 2. So 23 over x plus 2. This entire thing is our answer. All right, and the very last one. I kind of ran into that problem, but that's okay. We have y plus 3 on the outside. Underneath, y cubed plus 6y squared plus 5y minus 15. All right. To make y into y cubed, we multiply it by y squared. Y squared times y is y cubed. Y squared times 3 is plus 3y squared. When we subtract, we get 3y squared. Bring down the plus 5y. We multiply y times 3y to get it to be 3y squared. So positive 3y. 3y times y is 3y squared. 3y times 3 is plus 9y. When we subtract, we get 0. 5y minus 9y is negative 4y. Bring down that minus 15. We multiply y times negative 4 to get negative 4y. So negative 4 times y is negative 4y. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. When we subtract, we get 0. Negative 15 plus 12. Minus a negative is plus a positive. So negative 15 plus 12 is minus 3. So usually you do plus the remainder, but because this is a negative remainder, we're actually going to subtract it. So we have y squared plus 3y minus 4 minus, because it's negative, a remainder of 3 over what we divided by, y plus 3. And that is our answer.